Welcome back to the show. This is Not Without Right, a Shakespeare in the Public Domain podcast. And as ever, I'm your host, Dawn Monique Williams. And once again, I am joined by the Shakespeare girlies, Jordyn, no middle or last name, and everybody's favorite co host, Roberta and Sco. Welcome back.
What's up?
Uh, Roberta, you are wearing this book person hat that I see in all of my social media ads. So clearly you're a member of the Book of the Month Club.
Book of the month. Please sponsor me.
What is the book of this month? What is your,
Oh,
is it the same for everybody? No, it's different for everybody.
no. You get like a curated selection of like 5 to 6 choices, and you get to pick one or two, or honestly, however many you want. And then they get you like a hardcover book at like their premium discount. I skipped this month because I literally have too much to read.
All good.
Um,
I skipped this month on Fabletics. So sometimes you got to skip. Jordan, what'd you
sometimes
skip this month?
I didn't skip a single thing because I stay on my grind. So I don't know what to tell you.
Roberta, then what's in your TBR right now?
Oh my gosh. I'm currently working my way through Hunger Games. So I finished rereading the original trilogy, and now I'm rereading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was the origin story of President Snow. And now, after that, I will be reading the newest release. Wait, that one was Songbirds and Snakes, and then this one is I can't
Sunrise
remember the
on the
title.
Reaping.
So, what was that?
Sunrise on the Reaping.
Sunrise on the Reaping, which is Haymitch's um, Hunger Games. It's a quarter quell, which means the reaping rules are a little different. Yeah, I'm just reading a lot of dystopian right now and getting my heart broken over and over again and loving every second of it.
I can't believe you have such discipline with that Hunger Games because I saw somebody reading it on the airplane the day it was released, like
Yeah.
immediately. And she was like
Yeah,
halfway through the book.
I could totally just jump right in. But I'm in like a online group of girlies who've been rereading in anticipation of the new release. And the girls who chose not to reread Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes said in the chat, if you thought you were going to skip the reread and just jump into Sunrise on the Reaping, don't. And so I was like, got it. So I take heed, and I'm doing what the girlies have said to do.
And then for our book club that we have, we're reading August Wilson.
August Wilson, A Life.
Um, Jordan, I know that you are part of a book club, separate from the book club that you have with Roberta. What are you reading?
I am reading. I have it right here in front of me. I don't know if I'm gonna flash it though, because I'm undecided. So, and no free promo. And this is a man, so it's okay. I'm reading How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. And I'm reading it as part of the EDI book club at my job.
Your job still has that.
Yeah, as of right now, but you never know because
I love that.
it all sucks right now. They were talking about why they picked this author, and they were like, yeah, he's very neutral. Like he hasn't like taken a firm stance on EDI. Like, he seems like he's open to both sides. He's all about like bridging connection. And in the book club, again, I'm giving a lot of space maybe because this might need to get edited out, but in the book club, they were like, this is what we really need right now. And I was like, personally, I don't agree. I think what we really need right now, I think that's what we need right now. I am not about bridging the gaps currently. I am deeply upset with the current state of our political system, and I'm sorry if this video gets demonetized. I don't think you're monetized to begin with, but I'm sorry if this video gets demonetized. I hope that they don't come looking for me, but I am not
Radical.
pro bridging the gaps right now. I am pro doing what needs to be done. And I'll leave it at that.
Respect.
Anyways, that's the book I'm reading in my book club.
And how are you enjoying it?
We're only 2 chapters in right now. Like we literally had our first meeting earlier. So it's a lot of setup. I am not mad at it. I mean, I think the author is bringing up good points. But for me right now, it doesn't feel like anything like, maybe I'll use this word correctly. Revelatory? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I did it. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm like, but also, I don't know if you've heard this thing that like, okay, obviously this guy is very, very smart. I'm getting on a whole tangent. Obviously, this guy is very, very smart. I mean, he's a New York Times bestseller. So like, I'm not trying to like discredit his intelligence, but I don't know if you've heard this thing going around on the internet where it's like, the like life lessons that a woman learned when she was 9 years old, a man doesn't learn until he's like 39 years old. And some of it feels like that, where it's like, girl, I was thinking about like who I am separate from my mother and my upbringing when I was 10. Like, please don't play in my face right now. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. That's it.
Great. Now, our audiences met you because you and Roberta have your own book club, and I jumped in for Juliet. But you two are in the middle of a book right now that I did not tag myself in for. How's that book? What is that book, and how is that going?
Well, sorry, Roberta. Maybe if you want to
Go. No,
We
you go right ahead.
took a pause in the book that we were reading because we were having such a hard time getting over the Sophie Duncan of it all to fully absorb the like current book. It is called The Once and the Future Sex. I can't remember the author's name, but it's very interesting. It's about like, I think the like subtitle is Going Medieval on um I don't know, like gender studies or something like that. I don't know, something like that. It's a very beautiful cover.
Isn't it
Yeah.
sitting right there in front of you?
It is over.
I don't have that one, but I have our updated pick. Yeah.
Can get a shout out because it's by a woman. So I'm trying
And
to like,
it's a library book. Woo, 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 woo. Support
it is a
your local
library.
library.
They emailed me and they were like, "Girl, if you don't return this book, like, so I need to work
You could
on."
renew it.
Yeah, so it's a very beautiful cover. I don't know how to show it to you properly without. There we go.
You block your face.
Yeah. Going medieval on gender roles in society. It's not that it's not a bad book. It just doesn't have the zing of like cultural criticism that Sophie Duncan had. And I think because the topics are so similar, women's studies-ish aligned, that I was like, what if we softly put it away for now and pick something different? So that's where we're at.
Yeah. And I think
Respect.
it's the book, but I have to get it first. So we'll see.
Yeah, I have it. BRB.
Yeah.
And yes, we do want to shout out the public library system.
How do we? Okay, Roberta.
Cover your face. You got to cover your face.
I have to cover my face.
But you have to pull it back to where your face is. Yeah, okay. There.
We'll tag it in the show notes.
Okay.
But we support the library. Please visit your local public library. Keep libraries funded and open. You two also have, for this year, for the year of 2025, started a movie club. So I'm not allowed to call Jordyn a cinephile, apparently, because she resists labels. But that's what she said last time on the show. But you two have a Studio A24 2025 bucket list watch challenge, and you just saw something about unicorns.
Yes. Death of a Unicorn. The goal is to watch all of the A24 films released in 2025. However, they're not all widely released, so it is proving difficult to see everything. So we missed the February release, but we watched Death of a Unicorn with Paul Rudd and
Jenna Ortega.
Jenna Ortega, and yeah, it was pretty wild. Like I thought first, and then I waited to like say anything in the chat until Jordyn saw it. But I think we both agreed that it was good, but it wasn't like we also saw a different movie, but it wasn't an A24 film, right? Companion was not A24.
Companion, I think, was A24.
Oh, it was. Okay.
But I think
but yeah, we saw Companion earlier before this, and we both loved that one. So not the like equal amount of reaction, but still it was good. Gory, kind of dark comedy, political satire. Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Jay, you enjoyed both Companion and Unicorn.
But
Yes.
I think we liked Companion. It was more effective in what it was trying to do.
Yeah. I gave Roberta like a total earful on my thoughts of these two movies, especially Death of a Unicorn. And I did make the comparison between Companion and how I think Companion was much more effective in terms of its messaging. And I thought Companion was just really making commentary on where we're at right now with the state of the world. I don't want to go too deep in case someone wants to like watch the movie and then I'm spoiling it. But essentially, I just feel like Companion really showed like where we are headed, and things are getting dangerous if we let loser tech bros have access to politics because they're losers and they're tech bros. So
Yeah.
that's how I feel.
And that's that on that. Thank
Mhm.
you. Great. Well, I've not been to a movie in months. I think the last movie I saw was One of Them Days, starring Kiki Palmer and SZA. So there's that.
That's good.
It was hilarious, not A24 at all. But Issa Rae produced that, so I don't remember the name of her production company, but support Black cinema. That's what I have to say. We are gathered because Roberta had the brilliant idea to turn the mics around. So I pass my mic to Roberta, who gets to be host, and I guess we said Jordyn could be a co-host. Really, Jordyn's here for like comic
I'm the
effect.
one who orchestrated this entire thing. I'm pulling back the curtain. I was the one in the text messages being like, Roberta, what are your plans? Roberta, are you free to get on a podcast at this time?
You did.
I,
Although I didn't know what the topic of our conversation.
okay, Roberta, you're not allowed to say that. You're not allowed to say that, Roberta.
We're off the cuff here.
No, because Roberta already like 2 weeks ago was like, you should let me interview you about directing Shakespeare. So maybe you both were inspired, or maybe Roberta had the like impulse and Jordyn, you had the administrative task, and I was just like made a Zoom link.
Okay.
Team effort.
The teamwork makes the dream work. In any case, I will put myself in the hot seat as your guest today, friends. So you're gonna talk to me about I think not so much directing Shakespeare this episode, though we can have that. Um, but about my smarty pants
Your
Shakespeare
trip.
adventures so far in 2025.
Yeah. You went to a Shakespeare conference in Massachusetts.
Yes, I just 2 weeks ago went to the Shakespeare Association of America. They call it annual meeting. That this year was in Boston, Massachusetts. And in January, I went to the STA conference, which is the Shakespeare Theater Association conference, and that was in San Francisco, California. STA next year will be in Newfoundland. I don't know. It'll be in Canada. It's currently my plan to go, but as Jordan has noted, the state of the world. So we'll see what my blue passport can get me.
Uh, you might be able to get in and you will never come back. No one will be back.
Listen, I don't actually know if that's the problem though.
Or they might be like,
Maybe
you
it's
need a visa when we didn't need visas to get into Canada before.
literally.
So far in 2025, I've been to two Shakespeare conferences, and one was very theater focused, and then SAA, the one that was just 2 weeks ago in Boston, Mass, is really like a lot of early modern scholars. So there's like this mixture of like Shakespeare scholars and practitioners and people who are early modern scholars that sort of brush up against Shakespeare, but Shakespeare is not like their single or main focus. So those are the conferences.
Did you bump into our girl Sophie Duncan or any other exciting Shakespeare scholars that you're excited to talk about?
Okay, um, so with SAA, that was just 2 weeks ago. I did not bump into Sophie Duncan. I do not think Sophie Duncan was there. Um, Emma Smith was there, and that is so exciting. Emma Smith had a whole Shakespeare podcast back when we just listened to podcasts on iTunes. So like before iTunes became like Apple Music podcast, like before it became like seven
Oh,
different apps.
is that what iTunes became?
iTunes is now seven different apps.
Yeah.
It used to just be like one thing, like when podcasts were new,
Yeah.
there was like iTunes University or whatever it was called, and I was listening to Emma Smith lectures on Shakespeare. Um, and she's a Brit and just incredible. Like her voice is so soothing. And for our book club that Roberta and I have with Graham, we read Emma Smith's This is Shakespeare book that came out just a couple of years ago. It is on our book club list that I can link again in the show notes. So that was amazing. Even more amazing is I spent an entire plane ride sitting across the aisle from Dr. Margot Hendricks, and I was fangirling so hard on the inside that I just could not even like speak to her. Like it's a travel day, so like she's like in her sweats and like a beanie and she's got on a mask because air travel, and I just did not want to like be disturb her. But like I recognized her and she has like these iconic blue glasses frames, and I just was internally like geeking out. And so she's an early modern scholar, and one of the sort of um I, first seems like such a bad thing. I don't know who was the first, but a early, an early modern scholar who was really digging into like Shakespeare and critical race theory. So, she's an English professor. She was for a good long time. She's now professor emeriti. Um, and I just now she also writes romance novels now under a pen name. And so I when we were like getting off the plane, you know how the aisles are stacked and you're supposed to like go one and then and I stood back because I was like you must. And she was like, oh, just go. And I was like, Dr. Hendricks. And that's when she like looked at me like, oh, girl, please. But that was so cool. And of course, I mean, like, the same plenary that Emma Smith was at, Dr. Kim Hall spoke, and they both gave these like really fascinating talks about Shakespeare's relationship to sugar and the transatlantic slave trade. And if you remember when we were meeting before talking about like Sophie Duncan, and I was like nerding out about that section in her book that talks about how theater was financed by the Atlantic slave trade. Um, well, Kim Hall's talk was a lot about like Barbados and the sugar trade in Barbados. And then Emma Smith was talking about how when books went to being like these rare fancy pants items, and how like Shakespeare first folios became like a status symbol. And so she was talking about all these like English, like noblemen, English gentlemen who were filling their reading rooms with these rare books, including Shakespeare folios, that were essentially all financed because of the money that these men had linked into like sugar plantations and transatlantic slavery, and all all the scholars were there. Like Patricia Kimmy was there, and I fangirled out over her. So she runs the Folger Institute, but she also does a lot of writing about Shakespeare and early modern drama and critical race theory. And Dr. Farah Kareem Cooper, who wrote The Great White Bard and is now the executive director of the Folger Shakespeare Library, was there. I did not throw myself at her. Had I had time, I probably would have, but she was like guarded. Like she was like, she had like a
Oh.
manager, like there was like a stage manager who was like, okay, on to our next appearance or whatever. Um, but so cool to be in this space with these black and brown women. Well, Emma Smith's white, but she's still a woman. So shout out to you, Jay. Who are just like these remarkable, remarkable scholars whose work I like just drool, 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 drool. Um, so that was really cool. At the Shakespeare Theater Conference, significantly fewer scholars. There were people, of course, who work in academia, and people like me who are like scholar practitioners. But you know, like amazing artists like Lisa Volpe was at the Lisa Volpe was at both. So there are those of us that were at both. Um, but that one, the Shakespeare Theater Association conference, so they both feel a little bit like summer camp, you know, that like reunion of all your cool friends that you only see once a year, and so you just like have to kiki real hard. Um, but there's something I think a little bit different about like how English professors kiki and how like theater people kiki. And so the Shakespeare Theater Association really feels like a class reunion. Like it feels like it's very social. And so that was filled with like some of my just like favorite artistic directors and people that like run education departments at different Shakespeare theaters, and and a lot of teaching artists were there, because they do a whole education practicum at the Shakespeare Theater Association conference too. Whew.
That was a lot.
That was
I'm happy for you though.
Did you take notes, Jordan? Are you going to read any of these people's books? You love Sophie Duncan's book.
I do love Sophie Duncan's book, and I might read some of these books. I mean, or whatever some of the published works of these icons in the Shakespeare world that I don't recognize their names, but you know, we all have our specializations and like niche interests. So there's that. But mainly I'm just like, you two already know. I'm going through a thing right now. I'm going through a real thing right now in terms of the arts and politics because it's in the absolute shitter. It's not looking great right now, you guys. And so mainly I'm just thinking about this and I'm like, dang. And look at where we're at. It's getting worse. It's so sad. Can some of these people even continue to do their work? Like, I don't even know. Like critical race theory and Shakespeare, I feel like they don't want to hear that. That is not what they want to hear. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like it's just so
Wow.
sad.
They're going to get an
that,
earful from me because
that was a whale. I felt
I'm in mourning.
whale.
I'm in mourning. I mean, I also do think I'm PMSing, but I'm in mourning. More importantly, I should be wearing a black veil because I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not looking great, you guys. Like,
That just means these conferences are a radical act for these brilliant humans to like come together and celebrate the arts and Shakespeare and critical thinking. And yeah, that just means they're radicalists, baby.
Okay. I guess you're right. You're right.
So, so I guess that's a good question is like, what is the goal for you, Dawn, when going to these conferences, especially choosing to go to two Shakespeare conferences almost back to back within the year? Um, like, what is your goal when you go to these? Uh, did you achieve your goal in these conferences? What's up with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, well, I've gone to a STA conference before, and that felt very much like a great space as a theater maker who is like a Shakespeare specialist to like be in space and community with other theater makers who have a vested interest in Shakespeare. And there's something like 400 member companies. Now, of course, not every member company sends a representative every year, but they have like this conference had like a wide range of like breakouts to where there were sessions that were on like color conscious versus color blind casting. There's sessions on, like how to be good ambassadors for the work and audience engagement. And there's a lot of sharing of ideas like, do you perform outdoors? Do you perform period Shakespeare? Do you do it cut? Do you do it uncut? Like a lot of resource gathering and resource sharing. And so that one in particular feels like a great like networking opportunity. And I'm not somebody who really networks. Like I'm not somebody who like I don't get on the phone with these artistic directors like, "Hey, here's the play I want to do." So it's great to just see them in this context where like it's a little lower stakes in terms of like soliciting jobs and stuff. And in fact, like it's not a conference for soliciting jobs, right? It's not the like, let me buy your drink and tell you all the ways I want to do Pericles. Um, so for me, that's just really, really great because there's just a lot of like tap in, tap out, side conversations, that sort of thing. Seeing people I haven't seen in a while. Um, so that part of it is really fun because it just um feels like the like field games part of summer camp, right? Like the theater conference really feels like we're just gonna get together and just laugh and have a good time. And this year in particular, there were some people who had been going for a really long time who took note that this was the first Shakespeare Theater Association conference that they had attended where they felt like there were so many Black people in attendance. And like we had like a Black people affinity gathering, and we took like groupies, we took ussies. Um, and so
Just
that it was just like a really what'd you say, Jordan?
you just took pictures.
We can't call them groupies. I sort of like that application of the term groupie. We took groupies.
I'm not gonna um
Oh, you're no cosign.
your language usage.
No, no, okay.
I am not an overseer.
Well, we took photos together and I rather enjoyed that and I have them on my phone and that is exciting uh, for me. The Shakespeare Association of America is very academically oriented. And as you both know, and anybody who watched any single episode of this podcast before knows, I'm in my scholar era because I'm working on a doctoral degree. And when I started that doctoral degree, um, everybody was like, "Oh, like you should join professional associations and that sort of thing." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." So like in my first year, I joined literally the like uh whoever the APA is, right? Like the American Psychological Association, and they have like a in like organizational psychology like subgroup, since that's technically what my like dissertation major is. And I was like, oh, but this is not my space. I was like, I don't actually want to like be talking with like these people. I was like, I'm not like a social scientist in this way or a behavioral scientist in this way. Like without the theater filter or theater lens, I just was like out of my element. So when it was like starting the second year of the doctoral program, I said, well, let me reevaluate what um what like professional and scholarship organizations I should be a member of. And I have teaching friends who go to SAW. And I was like, well, what's it cost to like be a member there? And so I joined and then was like, I want to go to that conference because that feels like a scholarly, academic-y, smart person thing to do is to start presenting at conferences. I was like, so I'm going to go. And I have a friend from MFA grad school who is a college professor, and she goes and she was like, we could be roomies or whatever. So I was like, okay, sign me up. So that's why I went. The goal, just straight up in and of itself for this first year, was to participate in a seminar, which meant writing a paper. So the goal was just to write the paper and participate in the seminar. And I did that. Check. Um, for next year, um, the goal would be to write a better paper.
What was the seminar title? What was the topic?
So the seminar that I was a part of was Shakespeare Performance Studies Now. And we had a great seminar, um, chair, organizer, facilitator, WB Worthen, who's like a noted theater scholar, like, ah, and he organized us in such a brilliant way that made it for somebody who was doing my first ever conference seminar in this way. Um, it was it was perfect because I genuinely was like, I don't know what this means, a conference seminar. I've been to conferences, I've seen people present papers, I knew what a plenary was or like a keynote or like a workshop, and I was like, what's a conference seminar? Quite literally, how they organize them is that there's seminar participants and they sit like at an inner circle, like at a table, and then there's seminar auditors, and the auditors sit outside the outer ring, and the people who are the seminar participants have all written a paper to the seminar topic. They've all read all of each other's papers in advance of meeting. And depending on how the seminar lead organizes it, there's a discussion around the papers. And our um, seminar lead, after we all submitted our papers and he read all of our papers, he broke us down thematically into smaller groups. So we had our seminar was sort of huge. I think there was like 16 of us or something like that. Not every seminar has that many participants. And so he broke us down into like 4 subcategories, all based on his reading of the papers. So I was in the Shakespeare Performance Studies Now, and then I got put in with 3 other people in the sort of like Shakespeare and social justice theme. And there were 3 other themes. So like one was about like specifically the text, and there was another group that was or elements of the other group were looking at like the performance as material object. Um, and then there was a group that was sort of looking at um, the role of the critic, but not like newspaper critic, but like what it means to be a scholar writing on performance you've never seen. So what it means to be just writing from a place of like archival stuff, right? Referencing performances and stuff you haven't seen. And so each of our little groups had 15 minutes to talk to each other about our papers in front of the big group. And then there was like a little bit of crosstalk across the four groups of seminar participants. And then for the last bit of time, it's open to the whole room. So people that are just like sitting in, but probably haven't read all of the papers. At best, they've read an abstract, get to sort of just ask questions, offer thoughts. And someone in the space had in our seminar had talked about directorless Shakespeare, and that just sort of like whoo, just like set the room ablaze, and contributed to a really great conversation. And somebody asked me about the universality of Shakespeare, and well, I don't believe that, so that got me going. And somebody also in my little quadrant, he had written about the 2012 Julius Caesar at RSC, which Greg Doran directed, and he said it in a sort of like pan Africa vibe, and it was part of the like global Shakespeare initiative because that's the year that London hosted the Olympics. And so his essay was really looking at like how those sort of like what's the relationship between those sort of like multicultural approaches to Shakespeare, um, and tourism, and what it meant for the RSC to do their first all black cast. Um, while then I was like, and the production was like so pan African, like so, and not even in a like pan-African way, but in a like so unspecific that ultimately my argument was that like it's more detrimental. Um, so we had some great conversations in our seminar room just about like what does it mean to do directorless Shakespeare? What does directorless Shakespeare look like? What is universal? What does it mean to like appropriate like cultural appropriations and applications to production? And somebody in my seminar had also written about Sleep No More, which he had seen about 15 times, but he knows people that have seen it like over 300 times. And so I'm like, I saw Sleep No More once. So the seminar I was in was like really great, and I think that had to do with um, our seminar organizer who held the space. And and so the organizer of the seminar, or the person that proposes that specific seminar, they don't write a paper, but they sort of facilitate how the room is going to go. And I sat in on some other seminars as like the outer ring, and they definitely were not all the same. Like the vibe in some rooms was very different. I sat in on a seminar that was about it was called like Women Writing the Transatlantic Slave Trade, or I think it was specific about white women. And it wasn't it was a lot of early modern authors who were writing literature that I know nothing about because I'm not an early modern scholar. I'm a Shakespeare girly. So the only name I knew was like Afra Ben. But what was a really interesting dynamic for how they structured that seminar was they had somebody start them who had like responded to all of the papers. Then in pairs, the participants shared each other's papers in pairs. And then Dr. David Sterling Brown, haha, was like the closer. So then he responded to all the participants in a sort of like summary judgment of the event. So it was almost like three seminar organizers, plus the people who had actually written papers. And David Sterling Brown wrote Shakespeare's White Others. And I love that book so much. And he does the audiobook as well. It's his voice on the audio recording. And he told me just a little bit of tea because a lot of I guess that particular publisher doesn't typically do audio recordings, but for him it was really important because he was like, his mom is not going to read the book. Like, so he wanted to record it. But in any case, he gifted me a tote bag. He gifted me book swag, which was just like so, so amazing. So amazing. So, um, yeah, great. Okay.
I have a
Dawn,
question
breathe. Yes.
because I don't actually know what your paper was about. What was your paper about? Also, I don't know what directorless Shakespeare is. So what is this? What are those?
Okay. So I'll start with directorless Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
And presumably, directorless Shakespeare is how it was done in Shakespeare's time. This is speculative because the role of a director is a modern theatrical convention. So we didn't really have directors in the way that we think of them until like early mid 19th century, so somewhere in the 1800s. So prior to that, a group of people got together and they worked it out, or the playwright told them what to do, or the rich person who was paying for it told them what to do. So if you watch like Shakespeare in Love, you sort of get the sense that it's kind of like we each sort of just respond, hey, it'd be cool if you did this or that, or then like the big money person comes in and it's like, oh no, no, we cannot do that. I'm financing this, we cannot do that. Or the playwright, Shakespeare in that case, would be like, you do this, you do this, you do that. So we speculate that these companies of actor managers just sort of worked it out together as shareholders and maybe who had the loudest voice or the biggest financial stake or was the writer was the most the bottom line. So it's not unlike a process that we have now, what we call devising, where a group of collaborators get together in a room and in devising there's an idea that it's non-hierarchical. I doubt in Shakespeare's time that it was non-hierarchical. There just wasn't somebody that was like, I am the director. Now at ASC, American Shakespeare Center in Stanton, Virginia, where I've worked a few times, they do what they call a Renaissance season, which is directorless Shakespeare. A somebody called director is not hired to direct those one or two shows. The company of actors, along with a couple of stage managers, build the show together. They it's a sort of a consensus model. They openly have dialogue. What if I did this? What do you think about this? They sort of pick and pull their own costumes and props. Um, and I've heard reports many ways that like some people love it, it works really great. Some people are like, no, obviously, with any group project, right? If you just think of your college years, with any group project, because humans are involved, there's a little tension, there's a little conflict. Sometimes the tension or conflict makes the experience better. But a lot of people in the room were like, but no, we need somebody who's like the bottom line to ultimately make the decision. And the person who was arguing for directorless Shakespeare was like, why? But I think more, um, I think his argument, my interpretation of what's really at the heart of the argument is less about we don't need directors and more about some actor training is really bad because some actor training strips actors of their agency or leads actors down a path where they don't feel empowered, where they don't feel like they can go off of their own impulses or express their ideas. And that some directors are so like auteur in their style that they just are treating actors like puppets or like you go here, you go there, you do this, which for me, and I know Roberta, that's not how we direct. That's not even how we would define directing. Uh, So I think what was interesting is he was talking about how the actors kept asking permission, and he was like, "You don't need to ask permission. You don't need to ask permission." And then we like the conversation moves on and da da da. And this same gentleman says, "May I add one more thing?" And I said, "You don't need to ask permission. We're all equal here. You just say what you want to say. Just put it in the room." So that's the idea, just that it's like theoretically the company of actors um, don't need to be guided by a single overlording vision. Um, it is essentially that his particular premise. My paper was um, me teasing a little bit at my dissertation topic. I wrote about Kenny Leon's Much Ado in the Park, and I uh, argued that the productions are made richer by sort of embracing actors' cultural norms or racial expressions, and that in Kenny Leon's production of Much Ado, that was a all black cast set in Athens, Georgia, in a sort of contemporary, at the time it was slightly futuristic period, like bringing in just like black music, black dance, like things that feel very specific to a region, to that Athens, Georgia region. I don't know why I keep saying Athens. It's not Athens. But wherever Much Ado is set, there's a place in Georgia that has the same name. It's not Athens. Um, but so yeah, so my paper was looking at um the sort of community cultural wealth model of critical race theory that looks at the assets that Black actors bring with them to Shakespeare productions.
Okay. I don't understand how people come up with things like that. My brain doesn't work in that way. I don't get it.
You
But
come up with a lot of brilliant things, Jay. I think your mind
Yeah.
does.
I don't know how people come up with things like that in the sense of like, oh, and we're gonna take Much Ado, but we're gonna set it in Georgia. Like we're gonna set it in the South. Like I don't even know how you work like that. I don't understand how you blend those two things together. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. Well, not that it doesn't make sense to me, but I just don't know how you do it.
How you even get there?
Yeah. Like what are you
Uh,
looking at in the text to be like, or are you not even looking for something in the text? Is it
Oh,
just like
that's a great question.
It's just like
yeah.
this is a crazy dream I had and I want it. I don't know if Kenny Leon is from Georgia, but like for me, for example, what if I was like, and I want to set what's like I want to choose a different Shakespeare play. Like, what if I was like, I want to set Romeo and Juliet um in a space station and Juliet is like an alien on Mars and like Romeo is like like astronaut in the that lives in the space base or something. Like how do you even does that
You
make
ju-
sense? Is
you
that
just did
I
it.
mean,
You literally just did it.
you just did it.
crazy?
Now, so you did it, right? You did it. You said, "This is what I want to do." And so, yes, maybe you dreamed it. Maybe you're like, "It's just what I want to do." Now, I get for right now, you just sort of were like reaching, and maybe you haven't given it a lot of thought. But the next step from there, right, would be go into the text,
Mm-hmm.
read the play, read the play, read the play, read the play, and see how that, like, what the play, I like to think in terms of like what the play reveals to you, right? Because you could say, hey, star-crossed. So, yes, somebody's on a space station because we're in the stars. We're
Mm-hmm.
we're in the space where the stars are, right? Like you can just run with that for so long. But we know that there's a challenge that keeps them apart. We know that they are ill-fated Nothing like being an astronaut and an alien from Mars to be ill-fated. Then you get somebody like Roberta or I to like be like a dramaturg, be a thought partner with you, and just probe. Okay, so how do you deal with the fact that they have the same religious figurehead, right? Because they go to the same church, right? So you think on that and you say, okay, so how do we explain the family feud? So you go away and you think on that. And then we ask, okay, well, how do they like consummate their relationship if he's in this thing or whatever? And you go
Mhm.
away and you think about that and you keep going to you keep mining the text, and then you might come back and you might say, I got it. So this isn't a first gen, right? This is like, what was that cute little movie where he was born in outer space so he couldn't live on Earth? So you're like,
Oh,
this isn't
I
a
don't
first gen.
remember, but I know what okay.
So it's like, okay, what it is that we're projecting X amount of years into the future where this is now like the third generation kid born in a space station, right? Like think of freaking Avatar, right? Like talk
Mhm.
about Romeo and Juliet, like it's definitely giving, right? Because he was like a human who like took the injection and she was like a native or whatever, however that works, right? So you if you just sit with it and stuff and think about it long enough, you can kind of figure out where all that lands. It might still be a really bad idea.
Yeah.
You might want to leave it alone. You
Yeah.
might come around to changing your thinking on some things, or you might say like, oh, but I just really this like cool thing. Because like if you think of the Leo DiCaprio film, right? The County Paris, that character, he's at the ball in like that astronaut costume, right? So
Mhm.
you're like, oh, I just kind of wanted to get an astronaut costume. So like you could figure it out. Maybe you move away from that idea, or maybe you've just continued to go back to the text, back to the text, back to the text until you can figure out how to make it work. Maybe you're like, okay, I'm going to have to do a little radical adaptation. I'm going to have to cut some things. I'm going to have to
Mhm.
borrow from some other sources. I'm going to have to get rid of this or get rid of that to make it work. But it does sometimes, for a lot of directors, it can start with, but that's what I want to do.
Mhm.
I don't know if that's always the best place to start, but it can start there. But certainly a dream, a vision, a sense, a feeling. The 12th night that Roberta and I did at OSF, I feel very strongly that 12th night is a blues play. Like when I read the play, I think about how much grief exists in the play and the work it is taking for this community to like exorcise that grief, that it just makes me think of how we have blues music and the function or purpose of blues music. So I thought about that, and that felt really important to me. And I also was really in a place of having read Isabel Wilkerson's Warmth of Other Sun, having just reread all of August Wilson's plays. And I was like, 12th Night is also a migration story, right? Like these two kids
Mhm.
are lost at sea, miles away from home, and come ashore in this like foreign place. And so I was like, really became interested with my like own sort of migration story, in terms of like, I'm a first gen Californian and I don't think about that a lot. I just am like, oh, I'm Californian, but neither of my parents are Californian. And so it made me really like, well, what if Illyria is the port of Oakland? Right. And
Mhm.
so then I had these conversations with designers and stuff, and it's a choice that we were like, we're not going to heavy hand, we're not going to say Illyria is Oakland, we're not going to change the word Illyria to Oakland. But as we, as a creative team, sort of jam on what this world is, we'll drop in some Oakland Easter eggs, some touches of Oakland, things like that to like explode or excavate the world.
And then what if people don't get it? What if people
Uh,
don't get that?
Well, I think it depends, right? I still believe that like
Is
the
that a
locus of
fail? Is that a flaw?
well, I think that the locus of meaning is with the reader, right? So I think that every audience experience is valid, and and a couple of things are true. I think it is 100% okay if not a single person who watched that 12th night was like, oh, this is Oakland. Because we decided that we weren't going to say, this is Oakland, that we were going to let some things live in the design choices, but we weren't going to telegraph this is Oakland. I think if everybody who sat and watched that show was like, oh, I didn't get any references to the blues, or I didn't recognize that there was grief, then I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a fail. um but I think the audience makes meaning, and because you're a visual arts girl, right? And when you stand in front of a painting or a sculpture, you make the meaning. The painter, the sculptor isn't there to tell you what their intention was. So you might get a little plaque on the wall, but even with that plaque on the wall, you might be standing there looking at it and you might be like, that's not what I see.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, the primary thing that's valid is what you see. And the
Mm-hmm.
person standing next to you might be seeing something different. And then you can have a conversation about that. And I believe the same is true. Your dogs are barking, Jay. Your dogs are barking. I believe the same is true about the theater. I mean, I think we have different tools than, say, a painter, because we do have the script, we have the text, we have actors' bodies who can be responding in real time to like know if people are getting it or not getting it. But ultimately, I think it's like, what do you experience as the audience member? Does your seatmate experience the same thing or something different? And what's the conversation you have on your way home in the car? And if you're like, yeah, I didn't get that, or oh, that moment was, and they're like, oh, you didn't, I totally got that, or like, oh, no, or like when you both are like, oh my gosh, that was brilliant, right? Um, I think seeing a play is can have that same thing of like looking at a 2D or sort of like non-temporal art. I don't
Okay.
know how some painters or sculptors, I mean, Jordyn, you've taken me to some museums and we've looked at some art and I'll be like, what is this? Why am I looking at a statue of hangers? Like what is
Well, to be
why?
fair, I also feel that sometimes. I'm like, what? Jeff Koons with your like blow up balloon dog? Give me a break. I don't care. But whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyways, I just wonder because I feel like my brain doesn't work that way. Or it works in a way where it's like, but that doesn't actually make sense. But maybe that's not true. Maybe I
But
don't
you
need to.
make meaning. Your
You make
That's
brain makes its own meaning, and that's the beauty of art, is that you get to we produce something, and then no matter what our intentions are, you get to decide what it is for you.
Mhm. Fair enough. Also, at what point in your career did you care about things like critical race theory and Shakespeare and directorless Shakespeare? Because, like, I'm sure there's some people that don't care about that stuff. Do you think that's like valid? Like
yeah, I
some
think
professionals that are like, girl, don't come up here talking about critical race theory and Shakespeare. Just put on the like fancy dresses and do the work.
I think that there is a good number of patrons of the classical arts
Hmm.
who truly, A, do not give a damn about critical race theory, and
Hmm.
B, don't know what critical race theory is.
Hmm.
Period. Dot. Um, I so of course I'm a director, right? Like that's how I made my living for the better part of my adult life. It's a thing I've been very, 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 very passionate about. So the idea of like, but we don't need the director. It's like a little sting. It's like a little sting. And I believe, and we'll see what Roberta has to say about this because Roberta is not a parent, but I'm a parent. And I think a lot of the art of directing is very similar to the art of parenting, that my job is to ultimately render myself obsolete. That my job is to actually be right there, fully present, boom, I'm there at the birth, boom. And then over the period of time, equip the child or the room with the tools, the skills, the understanding, the values, the ethos that they need to do the thing, whether I'm present or not. And you know, Jay, because I say all the time, because I'm a weirdo, that like I literally from the time you were probably 10, which is why you say you were already thinking about being independent, an independent person from your mother, because I've always been like, I will not always be here. I will not always be here. And that I wouldn't want it any other way than for me to ascend before you. And so it's important for to me that you develop the life skills you need to be able to function without me. And I feel the same in a rehearsal room, that like at the end of the day, they don't need a director. And so while I'm there, isn't it nice to like be a voice, be an active contributor, do play my part as a member of the team, and get the trust of the room so that they care what what feels like a value to me, so that they care about why the story is important to me and why I wanted them dressed in the clothes they're dressed in on the set that I've predetermined for them. That like if I can communicate with them why I made these choices, why we're all here to do this thing together, then by the time we get to opening, I can sit at the back, and the next day I can get on a plane, and that they can do it without me, and that doing it without me isn't, whoo, she's gone, let's change everything, but that it's like we built something we believe in, and we want to maintain the integrity of this thing that we all built together. Do I think that whole ensembles can work without directors? Yes. That's not the theater I make because I'm a director. But that doesn't mean that I think there always has to be a director. And I also am not the director who has to have every right idea, the final say, hoard the power, be the loudest voice in the room, because that doesn't bring me joy either. I like to facilitate a process that people believe in, so that when I'm gone, um, it still can move forward uh, with the care that I've put into it. Roberta, what do you think about these ideas?
Well, spoiler alert for the viewers, not only is Dawn Monique my best friend, but also my mentor. So I agree with every single thing that she said. I do think the process as a musical theater director is inherently a little bit more rigid, a little bit, but the concepts that I try to embody are exactly the same. I believe in fostering a space where everybody has voice and agency, and we can communicate, and all that stuff that Dawn just shared. Um, and some shows do require a little bit more, uh, like 5, 6, 7, 8. You have to do this at this point, and you have to do this at this point because music is timed and all of that. So I do think both can be true, that, and that's what I try to find, is I use those tools that I've cultivated with Dawn as a director, and I try to infiltrate that into the musical theater process, which I know can be very, come from a very like rigid historical director tells you to do this at this point, da, da, da. So it's like I try to find the balance between the two things. But yeah, I agree. I agree on all of those things.
Mhm.
And your other part of your question about critical race theory, fascinating. Um, so I have had an understanding of myself as a racialized person since I was very, 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 very young. Like, honestly, like 4, 3, 4, 5. Um, and and that is because I have a white mom. So I understood from a very early age that racially I was not the same as my primary parent. So the development of my racial identity started
Not
at
you
a
shading me, Otis Williams.
he's the one that would always say like kids just favor their moms. His birthday is tomorrow. Happy birthday, Leotis Williams.
I didn't know that. Okay, happy
Yeah.
birthday.
um, um, but no, he set up that paradigm. Whatever, that's what he wanted. So fine, little girls hang out with their moms. That's what he taught me. Um, so so critical race theory, that part of it came like a little bit later, but I certainly understood myself as racialized very early. And then, of course, I was going to school in Berkeley. Uh, then by the time I got to high school, I was like living in Oakland, going to Berkeley High School, and Berkeley High School had a Black Studies department. And so I think I was probably really radicalized, like starting with high school when I was like taking Black Studies classes. And so I was into critical race theory before I was into Shakespeare. Shakespeare came later. So it was already like I already had a vested interest in race, ethnic studies, things like that before I even welcomed Shakespeare into my life.
Okay, I respect it. I respect it.
When did you get into critical race theory?
I don't know, man. Like, I couldn't tell you. I just feel like this whole world is like corrupt and broken. I'm sorry. I'm going to bring it back to the politics every single time. Like, and we'll all just have to put up with it. Okay. We'll just all have to put up with it. Shout out to Marianne Mackey because she wouldn't shut up about it either. So, like, it just is what it is. Like, I just think wrong and foul. And, not like I'm not going to say that. That's an inappropriate joke to make. Never mind. Cut this out. Cut this out. Cut this out. Anyways, I just think that from a young age, I, maybe 3, maybe 4, knew that this system is unfair and it is rigged. And you can see the patterns that Black people, people of color get overlooked, overshadowed. I mean, literally, even just like how you were talking about at your conference, and what also came out in Sophie Duncan's book, how theater is like, or early theater during maybe Shakespeare's time, or during like the transatlantic slave trade, was literally like, that is what made theater a thing. Like that is what was financially sustaining theater, was like the slave trade. And what they were talking about at your conference, like, I don't know, you said like the intersection between like sugar and the theater or something like that. Like, literally, Black people for years have been keeping this nation alive, have been keeping this entire system alive. Obviously, in some of the most grossly unethical ways and like inhumane ways. But genuinely, this entire system is built off of the backs of Black people and like just people in color, people of color. And it's absolutely insane to me that then you flash forward to modern times. And like you mentioned, there's like patrons who are like, please just give me a beautiful skinny white woman in a beautiful dress with her boobs pushed out to play Juliet. Like, please. I don't want a negress. I want a beautiful white woman. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's crazy. I think it's insane. And I think that is what has really gotten me fired up. Not even like, obviously, because I'm a Black person, duh, but I think also just like the hypocrisy of this nation has absolutely disgusted me from a very, very young age. I think it is horrid. It is horrid. I think, we can literally look at the history and see how it just this whole system is built off of like exploitation, and then flash forward, it's like somehow we're pretending like that doesn't exist. It's crazy.
It is
I'm
crazy.
the reason theater is thriving. My people are the reason that we have a theater to even speak of. Like, I deserve a place in that, basically, is how I feel.
You do. You do.
Mhm.
As a Black woman Gen Zoomer who spends your entertainment dollar on live events, you actually are the person keeping theater thriving. And if we do not make space for you and your peers and people like you, we will not have a future patron base for the arts.
Oh, well, because
Um,
also those old white people are gonna die. Like, they're literally gonna die.
they
And sure,
are.
they have grandchildren, and so they will
Their
be there.
grandchildren look like you.
But like, literally so true. But also, it's like, I don't know. I just feel like in order to even sustain the industry, you have to broaden. You have to constantly, you know, look outward and expand and research new topics and take into consideration things like directorless Shakespeare and or theater and critical race theory in Shakespeare. That's the only way that you can keep going, because if you don't do that, you're gonna lose people are gonna lose interest. People don't care. We are in a time where people do not care about white. Oh, I maybe I shouldn't word it like that. People want more than just white people on stage doing old-timey Shakespeare. Not that there's like no merit to that, not that that's like not interesting, but I just feel like I personally am more passionate about evolution and evolving, and the arts continuing to be like a living, breathing thing. And so like you've got to just be open-minded, is how I feel. So that's when I got into critical race theory from a young age, is because I actually am not like a Walking Dead zombie, and I am a curious individual. And
Yes,
I
you
would
you
say, Jordyn, I've known you for such a long time, and I think that's the thing that I have admired the most in you is like you have been a radical thinker and doer and mover and shaker ever since I've known you. Like you, and
yeah.
how could you not? Look where you come from. Your mom is literally the biggest critical thinker I know. So I feel like you were raised to
I
already be thinking forward.
like I'm a woman about the town. You know what I mean? Like, I want to be where the people are. Shout out. Um, so like I just can't I can't do this. I can't do with where we're at right now. It makes me the most unhappy. Anyways, this podcast episode is about you, Mom.
and on that note,
Let's go.